Hi, welcome back to
Common Roots.
This is the podcast where we dig into herbalism, history, and healthcare advocacy. I am Caitlin. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a clinical herbalist, and I make a lot of our herbal products for our herbalism business.
And I'm Cheshire. I use she, her. I'm Caitlin's wife and also her familiar.
Small disclaimer, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare practitioner, such as a clinical herbalist or your doctor, before starting any new herbal regimens, especially if you are pregnant, nursing, on medication, or have any special medical conditions. And always harvest plants ethically and sustainably. Today's episode is C for cherry, which we will talk about in the second half of the episode.
Today we're doing a little bit of a very special episode. Something you may not know about us, Caitlin does the research, to be honest. I have approximate knowledge of many things, as a TV show I once watched said, but Caitlin does the research. But I know a little bit about what we're talking about, and I know it can be a little heavy. So we were talking about this, and this podcast is supposed to be about healing, primarily. In order to heal, we have to talk about the injury. That said, if you're not in the space to listen to all of the horrors, we will be talking about cherry and having a nice meditative session at the end. So just skip ahead halfway into the episode or so. We'll be past the very potentially unpleasant things.
Yeah, to be specific, I have a little blurb I've written up to kind of give everybody appropriate trigger warnings. So the topic of today's show involves gun and police violence and dives into systemic racism and government persecution of its citizens. In light of the current United States administration's persecution and murder of its citizens and marginalized people, murder that has been performed by and endorsed by government agents, the messages of the Black Panther Party may feel especially poignant. This podcast does not advocate for violence, but we do strongly encourage any Americans listening to identify how you can put your skills, passion, and experience to use in protecting vulnerable populations and your fellow humans. For those listeners who, like Cheshire and I, are outside of the United States, we hope that you will continue to pay attention to the actions of a corrupt and cruel government and make a point to challenge your own government officials and government policies that put people at risk, to advocate for your rights and keep yourself and fellow humans safe.
I will also say, we're going to be talking about the Black Panthers. There's some real tragedy there, but there's also a lot of goodness. The Black Panthers did a lot of good for their community. It's interesting as well. So if you are in the headspace, I would encourage you to stick around. But if you just don't want to hear it, which I totally get, and that's completely fine, just skip ahead to the part where we talk about cherry.
It is really hard. We've talked a lot about, in our second episode, we dove into the HIV/AIDS crisis, which involved, again, a lot of government ignorance and lack of care. And I think it's really hard.
And maliciousness.
Yeah, I think it's really hard in the modern day. We want to discuss certain topics, and it's impossible to discuss those topics without getting into politics, because specifically healthcare has become a political issue pretty much globally, not just in the United States. So it's really hard to keep politics out of it, and so we are going to touch on these things. I think the message that I want to take away from this is, yes, there's a lot of uncomfortableness in talking about racism and government abuse, but we, the people, can come together
and cooperate and help each other. And it doesn't have to be you're like fighting the power. Sometimes you fight the power just by being good and connected to your community and your neighbors.
And taking care of yourself.
And sometimes you fight the power, but it's you can do a lot. Everyone can do a lot just by being there and part of your community and helping people who need it. Now, I do think there's something to be said, like, it's nice to do something nice for a small number of people. It's hard to do something nice for a huge number of people. If you work in an office with 50 people in it, I don't think you should bring in a potluck for everyone. But, like maybe your department is like 6 people and you see that someone is like skipping lunches and they're hungry and they maybe just joined and they're not in a very well-paid position. Just, give them a sandwich. Something like that. Just a tiny little act of kindness like that does so much. And those people then, if you're there for people, people are there for you. And that heals. That builds a better world.
Yeah. To dive into our topic, we're going to do a quick history, which probably won't be that quick, but I'm trying. So this year is actually the 60th anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party. It was founded in Oakland, California in 1966. At the time in California, there was a large influx of Black Americans emigrating from the South to pursue education and better careers, especially because there was a lot of industrialization going on in Southern California, what with the space race and all the other stuff happening in the 60s. So a lot of people moving in. While they were no longer experiencing the open racism and hostility of the Jim Crow South, they were now experiencing high rates of poverty and systemic racism. At the time, the average rate of Black police officers sat at 2.5% in Southern California. Similarly, local government officials, counselors, members of the Board of Education, not to mention doctors, predominantly are white. So Black people felt that they were not being represented, and cases of police violence against young Black men and women were rampant. So just to address right off the bat, I think there's a pretty widespread myth that the Black Panthers are seen as sort of violent, gun-waving lunatics, and sort of contrasted against people like Martin Luther King Jr. and his peaceful protests, where people just did sit-ins and allowed themselves to be arrested and protested from in jail and things like that. At the time, in California, it was fully legal to open carry rifles and shotguns. The Black Panthers studied this law extensively and acted fully within their rights. They carried these weapons. They never pointed them at anyone. Mm-hmm. The firefights that Black Panthers got into were actually, not to get too far into the conspiracy politics of it, there was deliberate government interference. So the Black Panthers focused on educating the Black community on how to legally and safely arm themselves. They taught gun safety, best practices, and had people memorize the law, like word for word, so that they could recite it to police officers if they were confronted. So they weren't just walking around pointing guns at people.
They just had them, right? Really what they were doing, truthfully, was enforcing the law. Because the people whose job it was to enforce the law at the time were not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like I said, deliberate government interference came. The CIA and the FBI, as well as heads of police in California, caused deliberate infighting in the Black Panthers, which led to violence between them and other Black power groups and with the police. So this led to their being dissolved in about 1980. So as we mentioned in our first episode, criminalization is one of the many ways that the government uses to kind of oppress, marginalize people. The 1960s and 70s saw a wave of laws against marijuana and psychedelic drugs, as well as the passage of a lot of gun control legislation. American drug and gun policy at the time was not really based on any safety or rationality, but were deliberately designed to criminalize these groups.
Yes. So I know Governor Ronald Reagan of California at the time is the one who passed gun control specifically to limit what the Black Panthers were doing, basically. It was, if you've ever seen BoJack Horseman, maybe, that episode where all the women start carrying guns and then sensible gun control regulation is passed. It was that, but unironically, that actually just happened to Black people, basically.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, to touch on this in the UK, actually, there was a British Black Panther Party.
I did not know that.
Yes.
You mentioned it while you were doing your research, and I'm very fascinated.
Yeah, so the British Black Power movement was founded in 1968. They would then change their name to the British Black Panthers in the next year. So just like I usually talk about, the UK is probably like 5 to 10 years behind the US in doing things. So this is going to be in the 70s as opposed to in the 60s when this is happening in California. So obviously healthcare wasn't as much of a concern for them in Britain at the time because they had a much better NHS.
Yes.
So they focused on challenging police violence against Black people in Great Britain. So a lot of members were arrested for threats against the police. One such member wrote an essay which outlined step by step how Black people could refuse to cooperate with the police if they were not legally obligated to. And he was arrested and charged for that. Mm-hmm.
But so he was just for informing people of the rights that they legally had.
It was, yes, because he basically, the essay was, you should refuse to cooperate with the police.
Within the legal boundary that you are permitted.
Yes. Evidence released from Special Branch and the Home Office after the fact both revealed that just like in America, the government went on a campaign against the Black Power movement. There was an incident called the Mangrove 9. So the Mangrove was a restaurant that was frequented by a lot of Black Power Party members, as well as just being like a Black-owned restaurant in a white neighborhood that was very, very popular.
Okay.
So police conducted a total of 12 raids over the course of 6 months against this restaurant.
So every 2 weeks, roughly.
Yeah. They never found a single shred of evidence of any illegal activity. Because of the ongoing raids, 150 people, unarmed, because that was against the law in the UK, right?
Sure.
Marched on the police station.
Okay, as a protest.
Yes. The police station called in like their entire force, as well as notified like Special Branch.
For unarmed people.
Who were protesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, 19 people were arrested. 9 of them were charged by the Crown with incitement to riot. When these 9 people went to trial, they used their legal rights to demand that the jury be all Black. They actually cited the Magna Carta, which was very interesting. Basically, they were able to use their legal rights to, in jury selection, point out like injustices in the system.
Interesting.
All of them were eventually found not guilty on all charges, and a lot of charges were dropped.
Well, that is good, at least.
So after this, the government made changes to the justice system so that defendants could no longer at all participate in jury selection in order to deliberately stack the deck against future cases. Interesting.
I mean, that is... So basically, the police incited them to riot by raiding them every 2 weeks for 6 months. They didn't
riot, to be absolutely clear.
Yes, but then they didn't riot. Then they protested, and they were arrested by those police that had been harassing them for months for incitement to riot.
Mm-hmm.
What a fun situation.
Yeah.
Very sensible.
So that's all the, like, criminal justice part of the Black Panthers. What we want to talk about in this podcast specifically is the broader view that the Black Panthers took on social justice, social welfare. So the Black Panthers believed that self-defense included not just arming themselves against police violence, but it was sort of a broad view of self-defense. In this broader view, lack of adequate housing, education, jobs were also forms of violence, and the party proclaimed its obligation to act against these injuries.
If you're sleeping outside in the cold, it's freezing out right now, you know? And there are some people who are sleeping outside right now.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those people are minorities. Let's not mince words. So is that not violence, right? Mm-hmm. Like, obviously they have their own circumstances for being there. But frankly, maybe getting a little political, I don't think anyone should be outside in this cold without a roof to sleep under.
Yeah.
And also, more than that, the fact that so many of them are people who have been oppressed, it's just another level, another rank of the oppression against them.
The Black Panthers saw poverty as a creation of the system. It was manufactured by government policies, and systemic racism prevented Black Americans from getting a quality education, earning higher salaries, and living in safer neighborhoods. Radical Black power meant defending minorities against all forms of racism.
I almost think that's the most important part, right? Like, obviously, we talk about all of the horrible events, like being arrested for protesting after people harassed you for months. But, like, I do think that it's important to protest when things like that are happening. But also, it's very important that if someone is outside in the cold, that you help them. Because otherwise they might die. And that would be really bad. Mm-hmm. And that is almost in some ways a more immediate need. Now, granted, you can do both, right? That's really what we should be doing. But also, doing anything is hard. Doing anything is good. Doing anything is something. So just do what you can, and it'll make a big difference. If everyone does a little something, that's how you change society for the better. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, systemic racism is something that we are still working on today. A study in 2016 found that 50% of white medical students and residents actually believed there are biological differences between Black and white people. These are things such as white people having larger brains, Black people having thicker skin, and Black women being more fertile than white women.
So this is something that I know. It literally just is all skin deep. Yeah. A lot of pseudoscience for hundreds of years has tried to make it seem as though there is some gargantuan difference between the races, right? And the races were very arbitrarily defined, and in many ways still are. But now we have, like, genetic knowledge, right? And we know that because humanity was born in Africa, that's our origin point. There's something called the founder effect, that basically the people who left Africa and would go off and settle the rest of the world in a very, very long time ago times, as I said, approximate knowledge of many things, would build communities around just a few people that then new people would join in and merge with that community. But that means that the first people who went out there would start that founder effect. So basically what this really boils down to is that Africa itself, the difference between different countries and people in Africa, who we would broadly just say they're Black, is far and away most of humanity's genetic diversity, right? The genetic diversity between us and a Black person from certain areas in Africa, and like us white people and Asians and other groups, is way less than you would expect because of this. It's far more genetic diversity between Black people in Africa. I
just want to comment on that. That is really important, but I just want to make it like fully clear is that genetic diversity does not make Black people any different than white people when you're treating them in a healthcare setting.
No. Yes. Just, yeah, absolutely. To be clear, that's true. But what I'm trying to say is to push against that. Basically, we're all a lot closer than we think. It really is all skin deep.
We are the same.
The actual genetic diversity that might change if you have like a higher rate of a certain kind of illness or whatever, right? That matters. But we just paint everyone in Africa and we're like, they're Black, right? But that's what I'm saying. They're far more different. Different groups of Black people are far more different genetically from each other than they are from us and we are from them.
Sure.
That's what I was really trying to say.
Yeah. So in 1970, Black Panther Party leadership ordered every single chapter of the Black Panthers to open free medical clinics. In 1972, they incorporated the following into their 10-point program. We want completely free health care for all Black and oppressed people. We believe that the government must provide free of charge for the people health facilities, which will not only treat our illnesses, most of which have come about as a result of our oppression, but which will also develop preventative medical programs to guarantee our future survival.
poverty causes so many problems. And the truth is, whether the government is paying for healthcare or not, you pay for it, right? How many people who would have been violin virtuosos or whatever, or, you know, how many people would have made great music, great art, great science, great buildings, great works, been great people just to talk to and hang out with, right? Grew up broke and miserable and in pain because of fake science that says that the color of their skin is, you know, the reason that they're inferior in some way.
Yeah. An exact quote I have from a really, really great book, which I'm going to grab the name of and the author, because she basically wrote about the Black Panther movement and the healthcare aspect of it and the mutual aid aspect of it that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So the book is called Body and Soul. There we go. So Body and Soul, the Black Panther Party and the Fight Against Medical Discrimination. It is by Alondra Nelson. So that is going to be, I'm going to read a few quotes from it. I would highly encourage people to read it if they're into healthcare advocacy, because the Black Panthers really pushed for teaching people how to advocate for themselves within the system. So that's a really important thing. So just a quote to read from that. We have initiated a free health clinic to combat the health problems which exist among poor and oppressed people. We realize that a person's health is his most valuable possession. We also realize that healthcare and inadequate facilities can be used as a tool to perpetuate genocide against a people. We know that as long as the oppressor controls the institutions within our oppressed communities, we will be subjected to institutionalized genocide, whether it comes from inadequate housing, the barrel of a pig shotgun, or from inadequate medical attention. We must create institutions within our communities that are controlled and maintained by the people. And something I really liked about this quote was that the Black Panthers weren't saying, this is a free health clinic for Black people.
Yeah, it's just a free health clinic.
They were saying that this is a free health clinic for oppressed people. And I think in the modern day, we can definitely find a lot of cases in which a marginalized group is being denied access to life-saving healthcare, life-saving medical treatments that are essential, and, you know, it's being gate-kept. So the clinics were not just places where poor and marginalized people received care. They also became places of education and learning. The staff was comprised of 100% volunteers, both trained healthcare workers and just regular lay people. So a lot of the regular volunteers would shadow the healthcare workers to learn things. Another important thing that I noticed was the inclusion of preventative medical programs. A lot of these clinics did basic things like taking blood pressure and telling people this is what your blood pressure number means, and treating chronic illness like diabetes and obesity and, you know, issues like that. And of course, in the Black community, they had an entire sickle cell anemia testing program where they taught people how to send their own blood off to clinics to get their blood tested. So the slogan was "Survival Pending Revolution."
I love that. That's
so
really good.
They believed for people to be able to fight for their liberation, they needed to survive. And health is fundamental to that survival.
I mean, that's genius. I just love the Black Panthers so much. Like, they're just... what they did is everything I want to do. And I really think that they paved the way in a lot of ways.
I mean, I think it's definitely something that you and I are both extremely passionate about, and the reason that I studied herbalism in the first place. Like, I'm not gonna shill right now at this very second, but I want to make that point that you and I both feel very strongly that, like, there's a lot of traditional knowledge that's been hidden away.
Yes. Yeah, so that it can be monetized, I think, truthfully.
Yeah.
Which, admittedly, we ourselves are monetized, but then that's the world we live in, isn't it?
I would love to offer free stuff.
I mean, the truth is, when we get going, maybe we can.
Obviously, yeah, but
And I would love to do
sucks.
that, and we should. But
Yeah.
I also think, like, part of what we want to do are workshops and things where we can teach people the knowledge that they need to then potentially do things for themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the most important thing. That's the second most important thing. The most important thing is community, because you will never know everything. That is just impossible. Even if you are an actual medical trained professional, you won't know everything. That's why they specialize and do all those other things. And they work in a big hospital with a lot of other doctors. So you need someone else who knows things. Like, I know, for example, that if your pee smells sweet, that's a strong sign of diabetes. But, like, what a bizarre piece of information, right? But I have that knowledge. So now if someone mentions to me that, that's something I could be like, oh, you might have diabetes. You should get checked.
It reminds me of that one story on Reddit where a guy peed on a birth control stick as a joke and it tested positive. And it actually turns out that that is a symptom of testicular cancer. So the internet was like, please go get checked. And he found he had testicular cancer, and he found it in a really early stage.
Yeah.
So he was fine.
But isn't that fascinating? So in a way, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's not as close of a community because it's on the internet.
Yeah.
But they basically saved his life.
Yes, absolutely.
The knowledge that the community had saved his life. And ultimately, in the end, it was a doctor who saved his life. I'm not trying to say doctors are useless or anything like that.
Right.
They're very important in some places. But basically, the doctor that... he wouldn't have gone to the hospital and he would have died if Reddit hadn't saved his life. He also, if there was only Reddit, would have needed to go to a doctor and not lived, probably.
Yeah.
But... like, this is important. And there are rumors and other things that can spread that people then start doing really unhealthy things to themselves. Don't do that, right? Like, make sure you verify your sources.
Yeah.
And just someone that is telling you that you like, that you're friends with or whatever, that you think you're friends with, or you have a parasocial relationship with, that is not... like, if you die, they don't lose anything, right?
It's really hard. It's really, really hard because on the one hand, you and I are sitting here and are talking about government conspiracies to kill people. And then on the other hand, the medical science that we're relying on is heavily government funded, right?
Yes.
So it's so easy to fall down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole.
As I
that
have.
The government has done this research and has lied openly about this research that they've published to hurt people. And I think it's really important for us to remember the distinction between people who have a passion for science and who are working tirelessly for very little pay to find answers to save people's lives.
Yeah.
And then the people who are making a lot of money without scientific knowledge, and then making policy decisions. I think the distinction between those two groups is essential when we're looking at this.
I honestly, no notes.
I think it's really important to remember that, like, the people who have the passion for science, they're not being paid what they should be paid. These people are doing this work because they love this work.
And they want to help people.
And they want to save people's lives. Like, if you look at the people who are making money in the pharmaceutical industry...
yeah, it's not the workers
on
the ground.
Is it the person who is developing a vaccine for HIV? Or is it the person who's marketing and selling a vaccine for HIV?
I think it's mostly the person who owns the company.
So I...
hasn't done anything.
Yeah, I think it's really important to listen to those people because they're doing this because they want to.
Yeah.
Someone who's doing it because they want to is important and should be listened to.
And just double check, right? Like, if Reddit tells you to go get checked out, what do you lose if you do that? Nothing.
Yeah.
If Reddit tells you to inject acid into your blood, like, that could go very poorly for you. So, like, probably don't do that unless you're really sure you know what you're doing and why. That's, I think, the main thing to focus on, right? But it is like, you should reach out to your community.
Yeah.
And your community knows a lot of things. And some of those things are wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just be careful. Be careful. Your healthcare is so important. But I do think a lot of people foist it off. It's like, I don't have to think about this because there's a doctor who can think about this for me. But the truth is, the doctor is freaking overworked, honestly. And also, they have approximate knowledge of many things. They have much more accurate knowledge of more specifically medical focused things than I have. That's for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a degree that I don't have. But they don't know everything, right? Like, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
It's just not true. So if you have a bunch of symptoms and you talk to the doctor and they're like, I don't know, I think it's fine. You need to be there for yourself and be like, well, the doctor is dismissing me, but I know I have these issues. So I need to figure out what the hell is happening.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we are going to get into in a little bit when we talk about how the Black Panthers use the free clinics. Because the free clinics were often not open the same number of hours as a standard medical clinic, and they were not equipped the way that a hospital would be. But you could go to a free clinic during its open hours, where it was open like 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. when people were not working, and the people at the free clinic could say, here's how you need to talk to your doctor, or here's what you need to say to the people at the hospital to get them to take you seriously. And I think that that is so important and something that we are constantly talking about. Like this podcast, I think the primary thing that we want to talk about is advocating for your health. So at the clinics, local residents could receive assistance from a patient volunteer. These volunteers would help with things like legal aid and housing help and physical health, like basics, dietary help. That there was an interpersonal support system. So it kind of helped the Black Panther Party like show off like this is what this could be. And one of the founders called it it basically embodied a critique of social programs and the medical care system, because it exposed the fact that the Panthers could accomplish with so few resources what the state didn't bother to accomplish with all of its many resources. Yeah. So,
I mean, I do think that's key, right? Like, I think that the best way to change society for the better is to do the things that you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And then people will be like, well, this is way better. And they'll follow you, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Who's going to look at you? You're doing something way better and easier and nicer, and it's good.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be like, or I could spend 10 times as much money and get garbage.
So really important, the Black Panthers saw these clinics as places where medical professionals could be introduced to the struggles of the impoverished. Black Panthers reached out to white medical students at teaching hospitals in California and Chicago to offer them a chance to interact with like other people other than the fancy schmancy people who were going to their fancy schmancy hospital. There were white doctors who said that interacting with Black patients made them better doctors.
Yeah, I think that's such an important experience.
Yeah.
And I love that, too, because it's like, why would you do that unless you wanted to help?
Yeah.
And I do think a lot of people going into the healthcare industry, like, they're doing it because they want to help.
Yeah.
So we should let them help.
Yeah, I do strongly believe inherently that the vast majority of people who work in the healthcare industry, and I mean work, not invest or own, parts of.
Yeah.
I mean people who are working day to day with people, care about people and want to help.
On a fundamental level, yes. And I think we talked about this in another episode, but it's like, it's very easy for you to other someone if you've never met them. Meeting people and mingling with people that are different from you, that will change your life. And it's really cool, honestly. Like, I mean, we all know this on some level. Most of the food that I eat people weren't eating here 1,000 years ago. Let's put it that way, right? So it's like that interplay of ideas and community is really good and positive.
Yeah.
And it makes you a better person.
Yeah, and I think it's really important also to point out that the Black Panther Party invited in members from other important groups. So feminist groups were invited into the Black Panther Party spaces. There were a lot of like alternative lifestyle hippies. Basically, there were hippie doctors, and they were invited into the clinics. And there was also the Rainbow Coalition.
Oh, interesting.
So there was actually
in the 60s?
Yeah.
It was illegal back then.
70s.
The 70s, this was. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, wasn't it illegal to be gay? Or did they
don't think in
decriminalize
California it was.
Oh, right. California.
It did start out in California. But I do think it's really important that even if it wasn't, they didn't care.
No, I'm just saying that that's really cool that they reached out to the marginalized community.
I think there's a lot of people who, view the Black Panther Party as like, oh, we're here for black people and the rest of you guys can fuck off. But no, they were talking about all marginalized and oppressed groups.
Yes, but they were for black people.
All together.
But that's because they were black.
Well, they were black.
It's like saying, I want to be for myself, and I'm also going to help you while I'm at it because I'm awesome. I love the Black Panthers. They're so cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm also going to help you while I'm at it because I'm great. But like, I am dying. I would like to not die.
But yeah, they there were feminist groups where they were teaching, how to do pelvic exams and pap smears. Yeah. And then there were, because the free love community at the time had a little bit of a problem with that, they did free STI testing. So they were reaching out to other people who were sort of on the fringes of society and saying, look at what we've built, come be a part of it.
I think free love is awesome. The issue is the STDs really kind of ruined it.
Yeah. So another thing that they did is they reached out to young black men and women who were interested in healthcare to offer them scholarships and connections to get into medical school. Mm-hmm. They wanted to change the system from the inside, and they knew that the best way to do that was to get more black people to be doctors. Some other really important things that the Black Panthers did is that they had a free breakfast program for impoverished students, and then they had political education classes that they offered.
Isn't that how school lunch got started?
Free school lunch, yeah.
I vaguely know this, but free school lunch got started because the Black Panthers were offering it, and it was really making the government look totally incompetent and
because it
evil.
It wasn't just that the Black Panthers were like feeding these kids, they were also educating them at the time. They were giving out radical political education at the same time, and the government hated that. So then suddenly, even though there was no money or resources before, now they could suddenly feed all of the starving children. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many of these clinics offered complementary medicine, including herbalism, vitamins, massage, and spiritual healing. The Black Panthers coordinated with black churches in the area to organize big groups for testing, vaccinations, treatments. There was a strong emphasis on the demystification of medical science. The Panthers advocated for patients to learn about the medical science behind their conditions. They also promoted self-health, believing that every person has a unique lived experience in their body that they should learn about and apply to their daily life. I will say, I do think a lot of the medicine that we all go to the doctor and expect, basically, right? Yeah. I think it's almost intentionally obtuse a lot of the time. Like, they use weird Latin words that nobody uses. It's sort of like how legalese is, like, deliberately designed so that only lawyers can deal with the law. Back when these things were being named, most everyone spoke Greek and Latin in addition to the language that they were native, and they used Greek and Latin to communicate with each other. So if you have doctors who speak English and doctors who speak Spanish or French, they could speak Greek and Latin to each other. As part of the demystification process, like I had mentioned, the volunteers shadowed these healthcare workers. And when healthcare workers were brought in as volunteers, they were told, you're going to teach the volunteers everything that you know. So volunteers were taught to perform pelvic exams. They were taught how to take blood. They were taught how to take blood pressure. They were taught how to process the administrative paperwork of a medical clinic. They were taught how to, handle lab samples. They were taught how to send them off for testing. They were given speculums and taught how to perform exams on themselves and each other. I did want us to touch on, just kind of in a broad view, the insistence upon over-regulation in the medical industry and how it can kind of act as a way to criminalize people's behavior. you
An
know?
existence, even the existence of trans people. I will say, regulation is important. I don't want to get too far away from that because I do think some people hear overregulation and they're like, okay, we'll just get rid of like a lot of stuff. And it's like, then they're selling you horse blood and telling you that it's morphine.
Trust me, I absolutely believe in safe and sane regulations.
Yes.
But I look at a lot of the, for example, nursing.
Yeah.
In a lot of places, to get a nurse license, you have a mandatory amount of time to be in school. Not to be learning and practicing and on how to become a nurse. It's literally just, have you gone to a university course? And I look at, in the history of nursing, how many really well-trained and dedicated nurses, Florence Nightingale being the most famous one of them, who learned in the field, in action. And I absolutely agree that there's like a really important emphasis on like academic learning. And I think there's a lot of academics that you need to know in order to be a healthcare professional. But then I look at like when I was trying to go to school to become a psychologist and how I had to study like chemistry and history and how nursing, how university, like the bachelor's degree, and I know in the UK there's like they do have 3-year programs versus the American 4-year programs, but there's still so much of it that's like, okay kids, let's go do algebra and art history, and here's all the other stuff that you have to pay for before you can get to learning how to be a nurse or a doctor.
And I do think it's really cool to be able to learn that stuff, but to make it mandatory, I actually agree with you. It is a little bit ridiculous. And truthfully, the fact that it is 3 years in the UK and 4 in the US, I think it shows how ridiculous it is. Like, are the nurses in the UK worse because they didn't get an extra year of schooling?
The thing is that in the US...
No, I think in many ways they're better.
The thing in the US is that you can't even join nursing programs until you've completed a year of study. Mm-hmm. And so it's literally just your first year of college, university in the United States is take a bunch of general courses with a focus on like math and science if you're going in that direction. And then if you've managed to get through a year successfully, then you can study what you actually want to study.
And like academics and nursing, there's obviously some overlap and interplay. But in many ways, they're two different skills, right? Mm-hmm. Like I have ADHD and I had very severe depression and didn't know that I had either of those. And full disclosure, I went to college, I flunked out. I didn't attend a single class. I was so depressed, I basically stayed in my room and stewed in my own misery. I mean, this was before I even knew I was trans, or even really what trans people were, and that they existed, and it was a thing you could possibly be. So yeah, I stayed in my room, and I wanted to die, and I never left, and then I flunked out after a year. And for a long time, like, that hurt. It made me feel like I was a failure. I was a loser. I was stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. And like...
Now you have to say something nice about yourself.
Well, so just to say, so no, none of that is true. I am capable of many things, right? And also, I had a lot of undiagnosed and untreated problems that were very much in my way of me getting an education at that point. So, like, it is a little bit ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was going into history at the time because the truth is I didn't really want to go to school. My parents told me that I had to. So that's why I've never gone back,
I'm certain
frankly.
that that's a common problem. But it's like, I fully endorse going to school to learn healthcare because I don't want people, like, you know, there's like that terrifying story of the guy who pretended to be a surgeon and faked his credentials and performed surgery on people. And that's horrifying. And obviously I support regulation to keep people from doing that.
Yeah.
I don't want people opening up surgeries in their houses, but I do think that on a certain level, like, I could take my own blood. Yes. And send it to a clinic if I'm feeling weird. Yeah. And like, I can I feel like I should have the right to do that sort of thing with my own body.
I feel like
Most
you do.
labs won't accept
Oh, really?
blood from your house. Like,
Huh.
I can kind of understand, like, we want to be in a sterile environment, but I don't know. I feel like it should be okay for me to sterilely handle, drawing blood and sending it off to a lab to be tested for whatever.
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, the law and regulation were used against the Black Panther free clinics.
Yeah.
So Portland suddenly implemented an urban renewal plan, which evicted one of the clinics from its site. The local sheriff literally cleaned out equipment and medical supplies from the site before the activists were able to do so. And then that urban renewal plan never went into fruition. So they basically said, we're going to evict this block of businesses, one of which happens to be the Black Panthers free clinic, in order to
build a park,
restore or renovate or something so that it'll be nice. And then that never happened.
Well, even worse than that. Then they stole all of their supplies.
Well,
then they were like, psych.
Yeah. And then city police.
Oh, man.
City police working with the FBI destroyed the Chicago clinic during a police raid in the summer of 1969. Also, the health board visited the Chicago free clinics multiple times in a month in order to cite the clinics for violations.
Yeah.
They also made updates to the city ordinances to make it even more difficult. And I don't want to get too deep into it because it's definitely going to be a future episode. But this is the case and what has happened very frequently with abortion clinics in the United States. We have, for example, in Texas, they passed a law that any clinic offering abortions or similar care had to have hospital standard infrastructure. So
they can treat someone whose leg has been cut off.
One of the biggest things is in a hospital, the hallways have to be big enough so that two full-size gurneys can pass by each other in the hallways.
So they said you have to do that
You have to do that in your abortion clinic. And it's basically, using the law and regulation and claiming, we want these abortion clinics to be as safe and put together as possible. And then suddenly a bunch of them are closed because they can't adhere to the new regulations. And that's where I come into regulation as a form of criminalization,
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, they literally just stole all their supplies and then didn't do anything. Yeah. Like, that's about as blatant as it gets. Yeah. I do think that's absolutely true. I agree with you on broad points. I just felt that it needed to be said that, like, I don't oppose all regulation. I don't want someone to inject horse blood into me and tell me that it's morphine when I'm, like, dying.
Yeah, and, like, for example, and again, I'm going to talk about my experience, but it's not necessarily me shilling our products, but, like, when I'm making our herbalism products, if a product has caffeine in it, for example, like, I have to say that. And I think that's a perfectly rational regulation, and I'm not upset that I have to, like, make sure that the labels on my herbal products are outlining all of the safety concerns. I do think that there is something to be said for, like, when it comes to skincare and cosmetics, having to get specific, like, laboratory testing performed so that in order for me to even release a certain product, I have to spend 600 to 800 quid to have a lab, like, do some levels of testing. And there's certainly, like, it's such a fine line. Like, obviously, I want my products to be safe, and I want people to know that my products are safe. And I do everything that I can do in the manufacturing process to ensure that they are safe. And I do agree, in a lot of cases, it is nice to do testing and quality control in these things. But the idea that the financial burden of that is on me is a little painful.
I think you're making a great point there, and I think it's by design, right? Like, a company that is enormous can afford to pay $600 is nothing. They're going to make $1 billion of whatever that product it is and sell most of it. And for a small business, it's much harder.
Yeah.
And yet the big businesses pay less taxes than the small businesses often, in many cases. Yes. I think that is true. I also think, like, the health inspector going to that Black Panther clinic repeatedly, I think that's quite scary. Not just because of what it is, but also, like, who ordered that? Who's working as a health inspector? And suddenly, what? Some guy comes in like a black suit and sunglasses and is like, I need you to inspect this place 800 times. Because I'm sure most people working as a health inspector aren't, like, part of the machine, basically, right? So, like, what the heck happened
like I said,
there?
city police working with the FBI. We have evidence that the FBI and the CIA were orchestrating these things. I do want to make it clear that even in the NHS, race is still a huge problem.
Yeah.
Even though, hypothetically, everyone is supposed to get the exact same level of care. Yeah. So Black and Asian women in the NHS are far more likely to experience preterm birth, infant mortality, and death of the mother, even when accounting for income. So this is really important to specify. Obviously, poverty is a huge factor here. And obviously, people in poverty in general are going to be less healthy because it's harder for them to get to the doctor and their lives overall are worse. But Black and Asian women who are on the wealthier side, are still getting worse care.
Yeah.
In 2020, members of the NHS claimed that the only reason for differing outcomes for COVID patients, because more COVID patients from ethnic minority backgrounds were dying than white patients, it was due to genetic differences in the immunity to the virus. So they are literally saying that ethnic minorities were more vulnerable to COVID genetically, and that's why they were dying.
Nonsense. It's pseudoscientific bunk.
Yes, absolutely not true. We have multiple surveys from the NHS that show 40% of Asian participants and 50% of Black participants report that primary care providers treat them differently due to their ethnicity. The report also showed that compared to white British patients, ethnic minority groups report worse experiences communicating with their GP practice, and they felt less taken seriously.
And so I will say, can I interrupt slightly?
Mm-hmm.
The NHS is the British National Healthcare Service for any Americans who might be listening. And I know that some people are going to say, well, that's because they're socialized medicine, so they suck. The U.S. stats are way worse. We don't have them on us at the minute. Maybe we'll put that somewhere.
I can say that the United States, when you look at Europe, the UK, Canada, Australia, and the U.S., the U.S. is number one for infant mortality. So one woman who made a report, she described herself as Black British, shared her experience of being misdiagnosed for over 26 years, not being listened to. She was finally diagnosed with endometriosis, but by the time she was diagnosed, she was completely infertile. The NHS report likes to brag about how diverse the NHS is, and I do think that it's very admirable that there are many people of color working for the NHS, and I do think that that's great. However, it's really important to point out that the numbers change as you go up the levels of management. Yeah. People from ethnic minority backgrounds are overrepresented in the lowest pay grades and underrepresented in higher grade roles. There's very few, once you get to the top levels of the NHS, who are the people making the decisions.
Yeah, so it's diverse, but it's diverse the way that, like, the black soldiers fight on the front lines and the white officers are drinking tea 200 feet away from all the fighting.
One really horrible statistic that really upset the crap out of me, and I ranted at Cheshire about it for a little bit. During COVID, the NHS had doctors, unfortunately, pass away from COVID. 85% of COVID deaths in doctors were minority doctors. This is like such an important fact to point out, because the NHS is ostensibly, all of the doctors have equal treatment. They're all paid exactly the same according to a pay band, right? Your pay grade is exactly the same. All of your training is exactly the same. You know, you go through the system exactly the same. So why, of your minority doctors, 85% of them, 85% of the doctors that died of COVID were ethnic minorities?
Probably for numerous reasons. And I think
there are reasons that they found. The reasons that they found were that they tended to work with harder populations voluntarily. Additionally, a lot of minority doctors felt that they were more likely to be asked to work without PPE. They were scared to ask for more PPE. They were scared to ask for more support, because there is a recorded, like, it's on record that minority doctors tend to be administratively punished far more often. They end up with, you know, write-ups and letters in their file and things like that at a higher rate than white doctors.
Because it's the whole administration who would give you a write-up is white, or a lot of it is, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that is what I wanted to bring it back to, right? It's the analogy I made before. The enlisted soldiers fighting in the trenches. Yeah. Fight the doctors dealing with the people who have COVID and therefore being at risk of getting it themselves are black.
Yeah.
And the officer is back in the plantation kicking his feet up, and he's white.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to recognize that even in a system that was designed to be fair, you know, all of our doctors have the same training and they're all going to be paid the same based on their experience and their years in service and all of this other stuff. There is a systemic racism problem.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. I think essentially is what we're talking about is the Black Panthers knew that there was a systemic racism problem in healthcare and wanted to do something about it. We're not anti-doctor. We're not anti-science. We're not anti-medicine. We know that there are people in these places whose passion is to take care of people, to love people, and to want people to be well.
Yeah.
But they are fighting against a massive, bloated, bureaucratic system designed to help rich people get richer.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Well, maybe not in the NHS, but... Well, actually, no, because I bet you the administration is paid a lot more, too. Well, okay, never mind then.
So, again, I know that was a really heavy topic, and yes. I want to thank anyone who made it all the way through it, and I hope that you learned something, and we're not asking people to, you know...
Rise up.
Yeah, but I also am not asking people to, like, go yell at your doctor.
Yeah, please don't do that. Please. They have really difficult lives as it is, okay?
But I just think it's really important to look at, like, how can you make your health a priority for you and bring that to the medical industry. So, this is our part 2. The cherry tree. So the wild cherry and the domesticated cherry now, obviously. Beautiful spring blossoms, yummy fruits, all that good stuff.
I love cherry trees and the smell.
I love cherries. I don't think people in the UK well, there's cherries in the UK, obviously, but the Michigan cherries are like the size of a pound coin, and they are fat.
Oh, you're making me hungry.
Sorry, babe. So in European folklore, cherry stones, or the pits, are used in divination games by young women to reveal the initials of their future husbands.
That's cute.
The tree is thought to hold protective qualities, and cherry wood was sometimes used to make talismans or tool handles to ward off negativity. It's a softer wood, but still very firm, so it was really good for carvings. So that was a big thing that it was used.
Can I hold the stick?
Absolutely. Hold the stick.
Should I wait to talk about it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the folklore, and then we'll get into the actual, like, the wood itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nicholas Culpeper links the cherry tree to Venus, but it is important to note that the tree is hermaphroditic, meaning that the flowers are both male and female. This dimorphism represents both male and female energy and spiritual aspects that are in all of us, and connects our gender identity to the spiritual world.
Oh.
The term witch's tree within folklore and esoteric traditions designates certain trees as possessing heightened magical potency. These are trees whose energies are not mundane, but concentrated. They are capable of both healing and harm, fortune and misfortune. The cherry tree is considered a witch's tree. It is often perceived as a nexus for spiritual and sometimes ominous presences. For example, in northeast Scotland, the bird cherry is explicitly identified as a witch's tree. There is a strong taboo against bringing the wood indoors. The tree itself is considered very unlucky. You should be very cautious if you see one when you're on a walk because it's like a bad omen.
Is this fruit you can eat or no?
The bird cherry, yes, has fruit you can eat.
Well, what? So people were looking at this. Someone spread that. That was a rumor. Someone had a bird cherry tree, and people were coming to their bird cherry tree, and they were taking all their cherries, and they were like, that tree will kill you.
Now, on the other hand, the Highlands
Mm-hmm.
in Scotland also.
Yeah.
Highland traditions view encounters with the cherry tree as auspicious and fateful.
Mm.
They view it as a connection to destiny and transformation. And cherry is one of several woods extremely well suited to making bagpipes.
Mm.
So
what the Scottish were like, we love this lovely little tree, it makes you lucky. And then
the other Scottish were like,
it's cursed and it'll
it's
kill
a
you.
witch's tree. Yeah. I mean, the Scots can't agree on anything.
That's the best part of being Scottish, I've been told.
Yeah. All right. Cherry wood is very well prized for creating wands. Cherry wand is regarded as a powerful tool for focused intention, command, and manifestation. It has an association with fire, which lends itself to spells that require swift action and passion. Cherry is also considered a threshold wood. It separates and protects us, so it is a good wood for doorways, doors, and passages.
I love the cherry smell.
It's
I like
nice.
this wood. It's very it's a little.
I'm going to ASMR a little.
It has like a weight to it. It's not light, but it has a delicateness to it as well.
What I like about the wood is that there is that woody smell.
Yes.
But you can smell the sweetness behind it. You really
Yes.
can.
And I think also like the bark is like, it's not totally smooth in like an unnatural plasticky way.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of little knobblies on it.
Yeah.
But it is smooth. Like, it
Yes.
feels good to the touch.
I am going to pour us our... You have to chug your water so I can pour us our cherry tea. Because we're going to talk about the herbalism part now. Thank you, my love. So, wild cherry bark syrup is the classic remedy for coughs. It is an antitussive. So before there was Robitussin and all the other cough medicines, you would give cherry bark syrup to your kiddos.
So what is an antitussive? This is some Latin BS.
So an antitussive is something that soothes the nerve endings in the respiratory tract, which tells the brain to stop the constant coughing. When your respiratory tract is irritated, your brain thinks that it needs to keep coughing in order to get the irritation out.
So it makes your throat less irritated.
Your literal, like the alveoli and stuff in your lungs.
Oh, even all the way to the lungs.
Yes.
Interesting. So your lungs and your throat.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's really cool, actually.
So there's two ways to treat coughs are expectorants and antitussives. An expectorant helps you to cough more to get whatever is irritating in your throat out versus an antitussive, which is like there's nothing, it's for your dry cough, there's nothing for you to cough up. Your body thinks there is.
Your body's just not happy.
Yeah.
But it makes you
basically.
sore also to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is pretty much the original way to soothe.
Oh, the smell is so good from this tea.
Yes.
I love cherry.
The fruit stalks or stems make a wonderful, gentle diuretic tea that is specifically used for urinary tract inflammation. The fruit itself, obviously, we've talked about this numerous times. The fruit is packed with antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. We've talked about what antioxidants do for you, how they are literal cancer preventatives in a lot of cases. So eat cherries.
I will say, be careful, because this is something I know. Fruit is good for you in moderation, because it's full of sugar.
Well, and fructose is also a laxative in high doses.
I did not know that.
Yep, fructose is one of the most powerful natural laxatives there is, which is why if you eat a whole bunch of fruit, you're going to have a bad afternoon.
I just think, like, cherries are delicious, and I worry, because I've done this many times.
I could eat a whole pound of them, I
But
swear.
more than that, I've said to myself, oh, well, I had some fruit, I'm being healthy.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, sure, but if you have, like, a pound of cherries every day, you're not being healthy.
Yeah.
You're going to die.
Yeah. A more spiritual medicine, there's cherry gum or resin that oozes from the bark. This was traditionally used in infusions as an emotional remedy or heart medicine. It was used to soothe grief, heartache, and emotional wounds, which I thought was quite sweet.
Yeah. I like that. I would feel a lot happier if I was miserable and someone gave me a bunch of cherries.
So what I made for us today, for those who are listening, and we'll do a little more ASMR, I have made for us a green tea with some wild cherry syrup. And it's not made from the bark. It's made from the fruit.
You can't just tink it. You gotta. I used to be into ASMR until I saw a ridiculous one that was about, it was like ASMR, but you're a World War II soldier. And they were like, get to the trenches, soldier. And I was like, I can't.
No,
I can't,
I'm out.
I can't
You've
do it
done it,
anymore.
I'm out.
That was it. That ruined the whole thing for me.
And I will
so I hope I didn't ruin that for anyone.
Staying on topic.
Sorry.
I will say also that cherry pairs extremely well with rose quartz. So if you're someone who loves pairing crystal energy with herbalism like we do, rose quartz is going to be your pairing for this.
Maybe I should hold it while I drink the...
Absolutely. We are going to do our traditional meditation now that we've done the last couple of episodes.
I don't have 3 hands.
I know, you're going to have to pick
I have to pick
two
things.
Oh, I don't know if that's going to stay there the whole time.
It's part of my meditation.
Listeners, my wife has balanced the rose quartz on the top of her head. She is going to try and keep it still for the remainder of our meditation moment.
It just means I keep myself still.
Still.
Centered. Oh,
It's already gone.
As I said it.
All right. Allow your hands to rest gently in your lap. Close your eyes or lower your gaze to a soft focus on your hands in front of you. If you are holding a piece of cherry wood, feel the weight in your hand. If you are drinking cherry juice or tea, take a sip and allow the sweet and tart flavor to permeate your mouth. Begin by taking a few deep, natural breaths. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, let go of any tension you're holding in your shoulders, your jaw, or your belly. Make your spine as tall and strong as a tree, but relax your muscles around it. Bring to mind the image of a wild cherry tree. See it standing strong and tall, its roots reaching deep into the dark, nurturing earth. Its trunk is sturdy, and its bark is a natural armor that has weathered many storms. Past the bark lies the heart of the cherry tree, soft, flexible, and full of sweetness. The bark is a quiet strength protecting the life within. As you breathe, imagine that same protective quality growing around your own heart. With each inhale, feel a gentle, resilient energy within your chest. The heart itself is safe within, not cold or stony, but protected. Like the bark of the cherry tree, you can build protection and boundaries around your heart without losing the love, compassion, and sweetness within. Now let your awareness drift up to the branches of the tree. See them reaching out into the warm air, adorned with clusters of delicate white blossoms. They are soft, open, and fragrant, offering their beauty freely to the world. As you breathe out, imagine that same sweetness blooming from the center of your chest. From behind your protective bark, feel a soft, warm light begin to glow. This is the sweetness of your own heart, your capacity for love, for compassion. It doesn't need to force itself outward, but it radiates like the scent of the blossoms on the breeze. You have both, the strength of the bark and the softness of the bloom, the protection and the sweetness. The bark is not a wall to keep love out. It is a wise guardian that allows your heart to stay open. With each breath, feel this harmony. Inhale the strength. Exhale the gentle sweetness. Your heart is protected, and from that safety, it can remain open. You can be an advocate, a protector, and you can also be a friend or a companion. When you feel ready, begin to bring your awareness back. Gently wiggle your fingers or your toes. Take a deep, deep breath all the way in. And then slowly open your eyes, carrying the quiet strength and sweet openness of the cherry tree with you into your day.
That was nice. That's serendipity, because I don't read the things you write before we come here. And yet you said you can be a protector, an advocate, or a
friend. I
Or
think
a
that's
companion.
kind of what we want to summarize. Like, it's all well and good to tell people to be an advocate and to set boundaries and to go fight the system, but sometimes you can just be a really good friend to another human being.
I'm going to quote Andor. Not directly, because I don't have it in front of me, and I have approximate knowledge of many things.
You're going to paraphrase Andor.
I'm going to paraphrase Andor. You break a cruel system through a million tiny acts of resistance and kindness.
Yeah, I think that's what's really important. And basically the message of today.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to necessarily, if you are not capable of it, go to protests and, rage against the machine.
Live well and love.
Live well, love others, be kind. Just be kind.
Yeah.
So, and that pretty much sums it up for today. We are going to read our little disclaimer one more time. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare practitioner, such as a clinical herbalist or your doctor, before starting any new herbal regimen, especially if you are pregnant, nursing, on medication, or have any special medical conditions. And please always harvest plants ethically and sustainably. And
this was
Common Roots.
I love doing that every time. I just want to do that for like an hour, but that would ruin it.
Yeah. If you want to reach out to us, you can visit our website, which is under the business name Alchemy, alchymis.co.uk. Feel free to send us an email there. You can also comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to us. We really want to hear from you guys. We're going to be starting up our social media stuff soon, so I'll have like an Instagram to share and all that jazz.
I want to hear your thoughts and your stories. I love I'm a chatterbox. I like to chat about my stories, but I'm sure you all have your own stories about the medical industry, good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Have a good day.